I thought we had your support. If we liberals are not united, Tedesco will become Pope. You have no idea how bad it became, Thomas. The way he and his circle attacked the Holy Father towards the end. The smears, the leaks to the press, it was savage. He fought him every single day of his pontificate. And now that he's dead, he wants to destroy his life's work. If Tedesco becomes Pope, he will undo 60 years of progress.
You talk as if you're the only alternative, but Adeyemi has the wind behind him.
Adeyemi. Mm-hmm. Adeyemi, the man who believes that homosexuals should be sent to prison in this world and hell in the next. Adeyemi's not the answer to anything, and you know it. If you want to defeat Tedesco...
This is a conclave, Aldo. It's not a war.
It is a war, and you have to commit to a side.
You have grifters making vlogs that were posted like 2 weeks before the movie even came out that were just titled, "Why You Shouldn't See Conclave," because, you know, people had the foreknowledge of the book's ending, so they knew what to put in their stupid, you know, YouTube videos. And then, so you have those people over on one side, and then on another side you have sort of overzealous Catholics who are attempting to tank the movie's review scores because of the film's perceived blasphemies. And then over on another side, you have sort of like liberal atheists who are suddenly backing this religious movie that they probably wouldn't even care about otherwise, but they see it as like an expose to sort of further their political cause, so they are suddenly like interested in it. And it's all kind of a shame, because for a majority of the movie's runtime, it's a rather innocuous but compelling showcase of acting and writing and just a great score and great cinematography. And these are the tenets of making an effective film that falls into the subgenre of, I like to call, people just talking in rooms for 2 hours, because that is what a majority of this movie is. It's just people talking. It's palace intrigue. And I really, really loved this movie for that, where they made a compelling PG-rated movie. This is a movie that is aimed at adults, that is rated PG in the year 2024. And I really, really loved it for about 90% of its length. And I could forgive any sort of slight qualms I had. But then about 20 yards from the finish line, the film executes on its now sort of famous twist ending, which in my opinion just significantly wounds the overall quality of the film. Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode 55. Today we have a featured review of Edward Berger's Conclave. Fresh off his award-winning run for All Quiet on the Western Front, Berger has crafted a film that almost seems algorithmically designed to win over your typical Oscars voter. But we all know Hollywood's seal of approval doesn't always translate to actual quality. Our review of Conclave will be coming up a bit later in the show. First up, though, in this final push before Halloween, we have many, many reviews to get to, both of the horror and non-horror variety. So please do give us a like, do give us a subscribe if you like what we're doing here at TNS, and be sure to watch the latest minisode on the channel, where I talked about all the shitty horror movies I've been watching all month long. But Chuck, unless there was anything else before we got into the show proper, did you have anything?
Well, just that, you know, if you're one of our viewers from overseas, you might not be able to watch Matt's minisode on the worst horror films of, 2024 Halloween season, because AMC, via its proxy and Shudder, got really unhappy with us for using trailers briefly in the video. and disputes have been filed, I assure you. But yeah, it may take some time, and we may have to adjust how we upload things going forward to avoid things like this, because our views are meager. We appreciate every single one that we get, but when you have been having levels of consistency and suddenly like half the world can't watch your video and suddenly you're still just in the double digits instead of the triple digits, I mean, you connect the dots. So if you're wondering why you haven't seen us, it's not because I've fallen behind on the production side. It's because AMC are a bunch of bastards. But yeah, we do have some things that are quote unquote non-horror, but I guess I would frame it this way. From a certain point of view, like some of these things definitely could be viewed as like horror, and dare I say, about a boogeyman of some sorts. Specifically here, the documentary series Mr. McMahon, from the Ringer, Bill Simmons's network that's owned by Spotify and is producing content for Netflix. Mr. McMahon and all of his wrestling universe of characters, as themselves, as the human beings, all sat down to give interviews at some point in 2021, maybe some in 2022, and they were kind of approaching it. And I should clarify, this is also from the director of Tiger King. So this is somebody who knows how to, like kind of worm their way into the trust of a megalomaniac, and get them to give up more than they should. Hey, we're recording, sweetie. And essentially they are all acting like they're getting the Last Dance treatment, that his career is going to be shown to the extent that he wants it to. And what do you need, honey? You are 4 years old. Sorry, everybody. But of course, we all know what wound up happening. He started getting sued. There's a DOJ investigation opened up on him. And at some point in the time between when everyone sat down to talk to the cameras, certain individuals, namely McMahon himself, stopped participating. And it's easy to understand why. We don't have the weird mustache going on McMahon. He is like, I think this is like part at the point of the storyline when he's just starting to step away, from like being the Mr. McMahon on the show and physically being the actual executive of the company before he bulldozed his way back in. But for the most part, if you are well versed in wrestling lore, every beat that this thing is going to take. And it really isn't going to reveal much to you. Outside of him, like, momentarily getting vulnerable about being, kind of like abused as a child, he really doesn't betray much. Like, in a lot, and like you pointed out in the doc, as we were kind of going back and forth about this, he doesn't really give up much when it comes to the business side of it, apart from just saying it's just business, it's just how it goes, and like but like the theme of this is, it's all about kayfabe, which is something that has always fascinated me, and I think fascinates a lot of people who appreciate wrestling. It's the notion that this is a real flesh and blood human being, but the performance doesn't stop when they walk off stage, because the world is the stage. They have to keep up the facade of of their personality, of their character, of the reality of the ring, wherever they are. And honey, what's up, sweetie?
Yeah, I also watched this too, and I just wanted to say that it's a lot of for the most part, it's a lot of McMahon just being like, oh, it's just business, or like, oh, I never really thought about that, to be honest with you, and stuff like that. And so the one thing that I thought was really illuminating in this whole sort of 6 episode series was the episode dealing with his son Shane,
Yeah.
because that was like the one episode where it sort of the show reached beyond just kind of being a beat by beat recreation of events. And there's that like moment with backstage between Shane McMahon and his
Yeah.
father. And it's like, oh my God, this is like the one moment in like this entire show where like the facade sort of breaks a little bit. And yeah, it was that was my my favorite part of this whole thing. And but yeah, otherwise I would largely agree with you as far as yeah, you know the story here if you follow wrestling and you sort of know what's going to happen. And I guess the most interesting thing that this show could possibly have to bring forward is its sort of its timing with all of these sexual allegations. And so yeah, what I mean, how do you think that the show handled that stuff? Do you think there's anything illuminating on that side of things?
It's just a shame that we didn't get like a Robert Durst moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where he's like, where the crimes are like actually the topic of discussion. Like they dip their toes into it in the actual interviews when talking about his rampant infidelity. You know, and like
Yeah.
where, you know, it's very like the casting couch is real. We all know it at this point. And this was the most powerful man in his niche. And yeah, if Trish Stratus wanted to have a career in the WWE, we can all assume that yeah, she played patty cake with him on TV and then was fucking him behind the scenes, even though she doesn't outright admit it. And that's just one layer of the onion. And and I'm assuming all of that stuff coming out changed the trajectory of what this was going to be. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, and that's probably why it took so long to come out, because in a way they were waiting to see what would happen. And I think they kind of like, I don't know. I almost wish they hadn't led with it so hard in the first episode, where they were like signposting that, yeah, we're going to be talking about that. You know, I wish it would have been more of a wham across the face sort of a thing. But I guess that they were, especially since this is all dropped at once, there's really no reason to treat this like, oh, we need to tease it to keep them coming back. You know, because if someone's sitting down to binge this, they're just going to binge it. You know, regardless of how long it takes to get to the salacious bits. And yeah, but when they finally get there, I didn't even know like they actually like informed me on it, because I wasn't sitting there reading every article. Like all the scatological play that was going on, and like and just how like depraved he was, like the fact that Brock Lesnar is so like he is a part of this. Yeah. And I can't believe that he could potentially get charged in this, you know, like legally, you know, because essentially WWE employee was used as a carrot to get him to come back, you know, after he was in the UFC for a while. And that's just, you know, kind of that's disturbing and troubling. And you have to wonder how many of those people who were talking heads in this were also being given the same deal. You know what I mean? And you have to, yeah, like Booker T. Washington. He was being interviewed in like 2021, you know, and not Booker, whatever his last name is, just Booker T. King Book, you know, the guy that did the Spinneroonie. Yeah, like and you know, other characters like him, other people like him. You have to wonder. You know, like it's like what did it take to get them to sign up and be a part of it?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting once you know it got to all that stuff. And I will say, for somebody who has been dipping their toe back into wrestling in just the most basic sense ever since, if people will remember, I had watched this past year's WrestleMania 40, and for somebody who has been dipping their toe back into the world of wrestling, I don't think they need him, honestly. Vince McMahon is unnecessary. I think Triple H has been doing a good job with running the sort of creative end of the show, and right now we have like this whole saga going on with the bloodline and like who's the real tribal chief. And so yeah, I mean, as a formerly lapsed wrestling fan who has now been sort of eased back into the world, I don't think they really need him. And I think the show is probably overall better off without him. Maybe more open to more varied creative decisions and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think I mean, I liked the doc overall. It was, I mean, for a lot of it, kind of paint by numbers, but you sort of like to relive these big moments, these pops, as people would call them, throughout the years, and the show does a good job of giving you sort of a cliff notes of everything. But yeah, I was just mentioning how as somebody who's been dipping their toe back into the world of wrestling ever since WrestleMania 40 earlier this year, that I don't think they really need Vince McMahon anymore. I think
Yeah.
Triple H has been doing a good job with like the creative end of things, and obviously I think the company is like bigger than ever, as far as like attendance numbers go, and being able to like sell out arenas and stuff like that. So I mean, they obviously don't need him.
Yeah, the whole merger with UFC is kind of staggering even now in retrospect.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like and Endeavor as a company is, they are kind of predatory though. You will notice that between the UFC and WWE, they tend now, after Endeavor has come in and taken over, they don't book events in like the wider parts of the country. You're not going to see like at least specifically in the case of the UFC, I know that that's the case. I don't know if it's true of WWE, but you don't see them like having, like fight nights in Wichita, Kansas anymore. Because they've negotiated these somewhat predatory deals with like the city of New Orleans, for example, where it's like, okay, yeah, we're not just gonna book one, if like one date with you. We're gonna book out a ton of them, and we're gonna spread whatever like the whatever the stadium or arena will receive, through like 3 or 4 dates instead of just one. And so like things have kind of shrunk, as far as the like how like accessible a lot of these things have become. And and they're just really tuned. They know how to promote, because like they were a talent agency to start with, and the largest stable of talent in entertainment, in sports entertainment, is this one. Like that's the legacy of Vince McMahon, even though he no longer has nothing to do with it. Like the Cody Rhodes era is firmly upon us, especially because every single, like, after I watched this, I started just like looking for like other like interviews and stuff like that. And now my algorithm in shorts is literally nothing but like Undertaker and Cody Rhodes reminiscing about stuff. And it's like, okay, this is cool. This is interesting, I suppose. But like, the time, the era shifted, and it wasn't on his terms. And and as always, it's always because one really powerful person got way too over their skis, going down fucking Everest, like at full speed. But but I did like roll my eyes a little bit when they had to bring Donald Trump into it, even though like, it's such a it's like, oh god, yeah, you guys are like maybe like 10 years too late to the observation that we have a professional wrestler mentality that was in the White House and could potentially be again. But I guess like we can blame Vince McMahon for President Trump if you want to tie it up that neatly. But yeah,
Yeah.
really this serves as a companion piece to like Dark Side of the Ring, because McMahon is always just like a specter. He's just the boogeyman looming over a lot of the things that happen in Dark Side of the Ring. And now you get to hear his thoughts on the Montreal Screwjob and everything else. Yeah, I wish we had heard more from the president of USA, the USA Network. That lady is interesting. Like I didn't know her story, but she's incredible. And
very cutthroat.
Very cutthroat. And what's crazy is that she was ready to pull the fucking plug, and they don't really talk about this in Mr. McMahon. This is what I found out in my outside, research, but like she was not okay with like what D-Generation X was doing. And like she like after like 1999 going into 2000, she was like, you know what? I think we're good on professional wrestling. But then all the other people on her board were like, are you stupid? Like, do you not see the dollars? And so like she was pushed out, and the rest is history. So yeah, watch this if you really don't have any foreknowledge, but you might get a little bored if you already know the story, as it were.
Yeah.
Let's get into Matt's Halloween movie marathon coverage here. You have 3 entries that you deemed worthy to like actually be of quality. Asriel was apparently a big fat dud, unfortunately. But what can you tell us about Outside?
Yeah, so Outside is a Filipino zombie movie from Netflix. I guess to be incredibly reductive, this is basically The Shining plus zombies, where this Filipino family sort of convene on this mansion out in the middle of nowhere that they've sort of set up as their the place where they're gonna hunker down during this zombie apocalypse. And then the father of the family, the patriarch, starts showing sort of signs of basically going crazy. And so there's sort of the family's sort of dealing with that, and they're also dealing with the occasional zombie that wanders onto their property. And so this was it, I guess, a little typical in that it's a pretty standard zombie movie, but there are sort of these little glints of interesting bits, I guess, where one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is they give the zombies, this movie's version of zombies, they have a very unique attribute in that they can still like speak, but the zombies are like mentally like stuck in their final moments alive, where
Okay.
if somebody died while they were screaming, help, help, or something like that, that's like where they are mentally stuck in. So this zombie is just walking around the Filipino countryside screaming, help, help, help. And it's kind of unnerving in that way, where like, some of them will be just saying like I'm sorry over and over and over, and some of them will be sort of saying like the Lord's Prayer over and over, because they just sort of, their brains stopped working when during their final moments alive. And so that's kind of a unique twist, I guess, on the zombies, which at this point are just done to death, of course. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It's probably about 20 minutes too long. I don't know why this thing is like 2 hours, 20 minutes, I think, total.
Ooh.
But yeah, it's pretty long. But yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed it. And then next up here, I have the movie Die Alone, which is one that I had to rent. And this is another zombie movie. But this one is the sort of driving force to keep the audience interested is that the main character has amnesia. And so there's sort of this central mystery of the last time that the main character can remember, he was driving with his girlfriend to get out of I think they lived in Toronto, and they were driving to his family's lake cabin in the middle of nowhere to sort of get away from this burgeoning pandemic, and then he just doesn't remember anything after that drive. And eventually he stumbles upon Carrie-Anne Moss, who is kind of a, old hermit woman in the middle of nowhere who has sort of outlived everybody else in this zombie apocalypse, but she may be more involved, basically, than he initially thinks. And so the central mystery is the thing that will drive you through this movie. All the zombie stuff is pretty tropey. It's pretty tired. But the one thing I will say is that Carrie-Anne Moss is really, really good in this movie. She sort of reminds you of why she was once an A-lister, back in the early 2000s, around the time that the Matrix movies were coming out. And she really, really takes the reins on this movie and just drives it. And so overall, pretty decent. Not the most original thing out there. And then, yeah, I guess speaking of not really original things, the third and final movie of my horror watch list is Don't Move, which is a Netflix release, just came out yesterday. And I think we had talked about this one a little bit on the air, where basically the premise is that there's a woman who is out in the wilderness on I guess a backpacking type mountaineering trek, and she stumbles upon a man out there who is doing the same thing. Presumably, he's out there backpacking, and then he basically injects her with a paralytic agent, and then she has to get away from him before it sort of takes full effect on her body, and she becomes completely paralyzed. And that is sort of the setup for this. And this one was really, really good as far as a testament of stretching a really, really thin premise to 90 minutes. This movie just does that in spades, where, I thought this thing was going to get so boring. I thought this was going to be one of those, oh man, this should have been a short film. This is so boring, but it really, really does that effectively, that premise. And it's one of those movies that I really wish I could have seen in a theater, because this is the type of film that if you could have seen with a audience, this is the type of movie that would have had the audience screaming at the screen, being like, "You dumb fucking bitch! Why did you make the decisions that you're making? Why are you doing the things that you are doing?" And so, yeah, this overall, it would have been much more fun to watch with an audience. But as kind of watching it at home, it still works. It's a bit contrived with the way that this paralytic agent works is it's, for some reason it's time delayed. So he injects her with it, and then it takes about 20 minutes to take effect. And then, it takes full effect at a certain point in the movie. And then over the course of the rest of the film, she slowly is sort of regaining all of her senses. And her, it starts at her fingertips, and then eventually she gets full use of her hand, and then her arms. And so, of course, she regains her various senses at the most convenient times possible, where, she gets, control of her fingers in time for her to unbuckle her seatbelt and, alert somebody at a gas station that she needs help and, stuff like that. And so it's a bit contrived at times, but it works. In the grand scheme of things, it works. And overall, a definite worthwhile watch, I would say. So yeah, I mean that is the end of my horror movie watch list. I think overall over these last two episodes that we've recorded and then my last mini-sode, I think I ended up watching 15 of the 17 movies that I had kind of set my mind to. The one I didn't get to, or one of two I didn't get to was Smile 2, which I do still want to see, but it's just kind of one of those things where the it's only in theaters and the timing didn't work out for me. And so yeah, overall a pretty worthwhile experience, and I hope to watch a couple more before we get to Halloween.
A lot of zombie movies.
Yeah.
Proportionally to it's depression core or zombies.
It is. Yeah, it's these a lot of the stuff that I watched this year was, these type of movies that are, they would have killed 10 years ago, around the time that Hereditary came out and The Witch came out and Lamb and movies like that. These type of movies would have killed. They would have done gangbusters. But now that we're sort of we're sort of at the tail end of the pandemic, and these movies have been basically relegated to streaming, just being dumped on streaming services because they've sort of found out that they're not theatrically viable. And so yeah, it's a lot of these indie dramas, depressing indie dramas that sort of have these, we're going to throw a jump scare at you every, 10 minutes and then call it good. But otherwise, this is a drama film for all intents and purposes. And so, yeah, a lot of that.
It's just the times we live in, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the one thing that, from last year, there's one movie from last year that I didn't get to see until, for this show, basically. And it's not one I thought we were ever going to get. I saw The Wind Rises, way back when, and I was like, okay, yeah, this seems like a fitting, ribbon for an illustrious career for Hayao Miyazaki. And then apparently at some point he was just like, oh no, I got one more in me. I'm gonna make movies till I die. My son sucks at taking the reins. I got to do this shit myself. And The Boy and the Heron, or How Do You Live, apparently is the most expensive Japanese film ever, animated or otherwise, because it just took so long. Like he's getting older, the pace of animation was a lot slower. Like instead of getting I forget 10 minutes a month done of animation, they were only getting a few pages of script done every month for a while there. But going into it, it's like a haunted house story, but it has all of the hallmarks, but at the same time, the creative choices and the animation is just so enthralling, and it just keeps it's full maximalist Miyazaki. He is going all out. There is so much happening in this fucking movie. In terms of where it goes, but the basic premise is a little boy's mother dies during a firebombing during World War II. It's yet again him mining his very personal experiences and losing his own mother. And this boy goes to live near the munitions factory that his father operates, and he's living with his stepmom, who is also his aunt, who is pregnant, and he's just trying to fit in. And what's interesting is that we were told initially that this was based on the book How Do You Live. It has nothing to do with that. It just gave him the starting point of this boy being, of not even losing. I don't even think he lost his mother. His family just moved to the country from Tokyo, And and then he kind of has the life lessons. Like it's a much more grounded, utterly un-Miyazaki like story at its starting point. And then the heron shows up. It starts talking to him. It starts saying like, your mother, like you want to see your mother. And the voice of the heron is Robert Pattinson, who is utterly unrecognizable. Otherwise, the voice acting is pretty bog standard for dubs of Ghibli movies, but he's the best part, just because it's just so inexplicable that this is our guy, Batman, doing this really bizarre voice. You can do that when we're done, honey. Okay.
I find it interesting that
No, not right now.
in this sort of world where people often argue about things like, should you watch the sub or should you watch the dub? I find it interesting that you chose to watch the dub. And
I did
was
it
there
for
anything
Pattinson. I did it for Pattinson.
Oh, you did it. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
I kind of did a blend. I started out listening to the Japanese dub, with the subs, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, I want to hear what Pattinson sounds like. So I changed it up, and I'm not that much of a purist. It's like, and I don't watch enough anime to like really know who to trust or not when it comes to that kind of thing. But Christian Bale plays the father. And I think Florence Pugh shows up at some point. But and Mark Hamill's in the credits. But with the real reason to watch it is the animation. It's just incredible. It's a kitchen sink movie when it comes to that. And there's this really, because like the house that they're living in was built by his mother's like ancestor, and he was this architect who went crazy and disappeared. And what you find out is that he disappeared into this world that serves as a doorway to many worlds and realities and timelines. And it kind of calls to mind like an Edgar Allan Poe story, or some kind of cosmic horror aspect to it all. And it really is kind of like spooky and unsettling, kind of throughout it. And when he goes to this other world, this old lady that was with him when he crosses over is now a young woman, and and then there's this other little girl who's a pyromancer, and there's a parakeet king. Like the ideas and the experience, it's just everything that this guy's career has been building towards forever. And like, if this is the last one, then this is the last one. Hey, sure. Sweetie, you're being way too loud. If this is the last one. It's worth it. Basically, you got to see this.
Yeah, it sounds very much to me like a lot of the characters seem like spirited away to me. Like, I don't know if it's, as far as the rest of his work, I don't know what it's most derivative of, but it sounds to me like a lot of very similar things to Spirited Away, which in my opinion makes it way more interesting, because that is my personal favorite Miyazaki movie.
And we just watched the Spirited Away somewhat recently, so I was primed and ready, but it really doesn't have that like Japanese folklore flavor to it. It's beyond that. As far as like what is going on. No. Okay, honey, you need to be quiet while I'm talking. It doesn't feel derivative at all. It's just, stop touching the microphone. It truly is just entirely a unique experience, even within his filmography. It doesn't give you anything you've seen before, which is the most exciting thing about it to me. And like during they kind of show glimpses of it, but when he starts having like his flashbacks to the fire when his mother died, the animation is just insane. like they don't even really give you a full look in the trailer, but it's kind of just has to be seen yourself to get the full scope of it. But it's a wonderful, wonderful movie.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I still really want to watch it, and I'm just kind of curious because when you talk about something like the filmography of Miyazaki, everybody has, their favorite, their least favorite. It seems like one of those filmographies that nobody can come to a, consensus on. And so I'm just kind of curious where you would slot this in sort of your favorites of his. Like where would you put this on like your Miyazaki like tier list?
It is like, because it definitely isn't like the simple homespun story like Totoro. Like the next step up of course is getting into his maximalist films like Princess Mononoke and like Howl's Moving Castle. It's definitely in there, but it has that those personal elements that came out of movies like The Wind Rises, as well. And so it's kind of, it gives you a little bit of everything, but as far as where I would rank it, it's up there with like it's in the top three. Like not that I could really settle on a top three right now. Like I just know it's there somewhere. Like with like Howl and in Totoro, but it's him like playing with his full tool set, and he even shows you things you didn't know he could do, which is shocking for someone as well established as him.
Yeah, it sounds great. I gotta really get on watching this, and yeah,
It's
from
on
everything I
Max.
understand,
Yeah.
it's on Max. Okay,
Yeah.
great, awesome.
Because
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
partially what funded this movie. They knew it was going to be expensive. They knew it was going to take a long time, so they convinced Miyazaki to basically like that's why all the Ghibli movies are on Max, because they paid for it.
Yeah.
And then that money was used to make this movie.
Sure. Yeah.
But what can you tell us about the next entry, which is a documentary that I really want to watch now?
Yeah, so I'm calling this final watch list entry my sort of horror movie brain flush, where I'm attempting to sort of flush all the horror I've been watching out of my brain. And so I did it with this film. This is a documentary called The Remarkable Life of Ibelin. And if people aren't familiar with the story, Ibelin is the online name of a guy who played World of Warcraft. And he was from Norway, and he was born with a muscular, like degenerating muscular disease, where basically he for the most part he developed normally until he was about 3 years old, and then he started showing signs of like falling down a lot and losing control of his like motor functions. And so his parents found out he had this like degenerative muscular disease, and essentially he sort of just went downhill from there until eventually he passed away around the time of his 18th birthday. And what his parents basically found out, he was confined to a wheelchair eventually, and then eventually he only really had control over his hand. That's like the only part of his body he could move. And so he used World of Warcraft as basically like a way to deal and a way to sort of enter into another world that where he could do a lot more than he could in real life. And his parents found out after he died that he had a profound impact on the people that he played World of Warcraft with, where he played on, if people aren't, fully aware of how WoW works, most people play World of Warcraft as just a typical video game where you run around, you kill things, you complete quests, you get better gear, and it's just kind of a slow upward, gaining levels and getting more powerful and more powerful. But Ibelin, he played on a RP server, a role-playing server, where he would basically go around and play the role of a detective in his server on his world that he was on, and he was like literally like solving people's real life problems like through the game, where like he would meet other people and they would tell him about their problems in real life, and he would like literally like solve them. Like he would give them advice on how to deal with real world problems. And it's crazy, it's absolutely nuts. And um all these people after he died just came out of the woodwork and were like, he helped me through, all of these times in my life that were awful. And so if this sounds like a movie that is going to make you cry, it absolutely is. Like this, it
Crying
is
right
so,
now, not gonna lie.
yeah,
Crying right now.
it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. And yeah, it was this movie. It was an incredible documentary. It was an incredible film. I don't even need to, you don't even really need to give it the qualifier of being a documentary. It's just a fantastic film outright, just from the word go. And I think this will probably land on my top 10 of the year in a couple months when we do that. And so yeah, it was just an incredible story and an incredible life that this guy lived for like the short time that he was alive. And yeah, just I fully endorse this. Like, go and watch it. It's on Netflix now. And yeah, just a great story.
Yeah, no, it's on my probably later this weekend. I'm gonna watch it just because watching the trailer was impactful enough just in that 90 seconds, and hearing you talk about it
Yeah.
was incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah, here we go. Boom. Here you go. Oh, I'm putting a lot of faith in my 4-year-old right now, letting her just run off with my cell phone.
Yeah.
But time to transition to the featured review of today, Conclave, the most controversial film of the year.
Yeah, this movie it's a minefield, basically. And I think it's largely, unfortunately, because of the online discourse of the film, which is it's sort of turned into a tainted mush of things where you have grifters making vlogs that were posted like 2 weeks before the movie even came out that were just titled "Why You Shouldn't See Conclave," because people had the foreknowledge of the book's ending, so they knew what to put in their stupid YouTube videos. And then so you have those people over on one side, and then on another side you have sort of overzealous Catholics who are attempting to tank the movie's review scores because of the film's perceived blasphemies. And then over on another side, you have sort of like liberal atheists who are suddenly backing this religious movie that they probably wouldn't even care about otherwise, but they see it as like an expose to sort of further their political cause. So they are suddenly like interested in it. And it's all kind of a shame because for a majority of the movie's runtime, it's a rather innocuous but compelling showcase of acting and writing and just a great score and great cinematography. And these are the tenets of making an effective film that falls into the subgenre of I like to call people just talking in rooms for 2 hours, because that is what a majority of this movie is. It's just people talking. It's sort of it's palace intrigue, and I really really loved this movie for that, where they made a compelling PG rated movie. This is a movie that is aimed at adults, that is rated PG in the year 2024. And I really really loved it for about 90% of its length, and I could forgive any sort of slight qualms I had. But then about 20 yards from the finish line, the film executes on its now sort of famous twist ending, which in my opinion just significantly wounds the overall quality of the film. I really, really did not like the twist, and for reasons I'll get into, and they're not the reasons you would think. But overall, I really, really did enjoy it. I thought this is a very, very worthwhile entry into um, the subgenre of people talking in rooms. But yeah, what did you think, Chuck?
No, I was quite taken with it. I'm speaking as a lifelong Catholic, but one who
Mhm.
isn't naive enough to believe that the men in robes and funny hats are these like saintly, perfect people. They are
Yeah.
like from parish priests on up, there is ego involved. They are literally on a career path. They can
Mhm.
settle for just being a priest in a small town if that's what they want, but really they want to be like where they best can, rise up in position. Whether it's becoming a monsignor, maybe even becoming a bishop, because once you've hit those levels, then the doors open up for you to be in the really small club, that is the College of Cardinals, which means you could potentially become pope. Like
Mhm.
the guy who is the president of the University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota, is one of the most egotistical pricks that walks the fucking earth. But he has Monsignor in front of his name, so you take from that what you will. You'll know who I'm talking about if you care enough at all, or if you're from here and you might know. But like that, like my knowledge of that man alone, when I was watching this, I'm like, no, this all makes sense. This is what they are like at a certain level. And the kayfabe comes out when they're in church, just to bring it all around full circle there for our conversation today. But the the hit pieces were out even like a month ago. Like
Yeah.
National Review did like a Catholic should just feel offended that this movie exists, and it's like, well, no, it's like even with its like twists at the end, even like I have further thoughts on that when we get to that point in our conversation, but ultimately it is a scenario that is somewhat believable. That's the kind
Mhm.
of thing that could that could happen, because these are supposed to be people who don't do anything with their genitalia beyond piss and shit. But we all know that
Yeah.
there's gay orgies happening in the Vatican. You know what I mean? So like there's a lot more to these people, but the performances, especially from Tucci and Fiennes, were just uh, exemplary. Like
Mhm.
they are going to be in the conversation come Oscar time, I would say, because this
Yeah.
is because of its subject matter. This is exactly the kind of movie that Hollywood is going to embrace, and but for reasons that have nothing to do with its amazing qualities. Because yeah, it does take what is kind of like the screenwriter was also involved with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. At least one of them was. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
holy shit. Like I want to watch that movie again now, because that is the ultimate people talking movie. And it's dense. And that's what, like makes those kinds of experiences, so good, and so watchable and entertaining and illuminating, because it just keeps giving you, something small that carries gravity, and like that's what makes this movie powerful to me.
Mhm. Well, I'm glad you brought up the fact that you grew up Catholic, because it lends important context, I think, where I am somebody who I guess I would consider myself like a lapsed Methodist, where I was forced to go to church when I was younger, when I through high school, essentially by my mom. And so I'm very familiar with church going and church going people and stuff like that. But for me, I am just so taken with this film's sort of peek into this very secretive process. And for me, like uh, Catholicism, it's always had this sort of old world feeling to it because there's so much wrapped up in symbology and ceremony and ritual. And like I remember when I was in middle school, uh, I went on a church youth group trip to Bolivia, and
Oh,
while we were there, we went to a Catholic church in Bolivia, and one of the things I was so taken with just everything inside of it, how ostentatious everything was, and there was like gold trim on everything, and but the one thing I was so taken by was they in this church in Bolivia at the front of the church they literally had a glass coffin that had the dead body of a priest in it, and you could just look at this dead like mummified body of this priest who I'm assuming.
incorruptible. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was so when I was like, when I saw that as a kid, I was so like, oh my God, this is so strange and this is crazy that I'm just looking at like a dead body and like and so that sort of extends to this movie where there is all these really cool like um processes that you sort of are clued into as an audience, like the breaking of like the signet ring that they do at the very beginning, and the shroud over the body, and the sealing of the Pope's bedroom, and just all of the threading of the paper votes. And I was very taken with all of that stuff because especially in the modern day, that stuff collides with things like these modern men, hitting vapes and smoking cigarettes and scrolling on their smartphones. It's just a collision of worlds.
Absolutely. And the one part of the papal death process I wish they had included in this, because like I guess I was like I remember distinctly when John Paul II died, and it was like his funeral. My family like woke up at like 4 a.m. to go over to my grandma's to watch it on TV live. But like when they suspect that the Pope has died, they have a special hammer that they take and they call the Pope's like birth name. So like in his case it was like Watia, like are you there? And then they hit him on the head, like with this hammer to see if he'll like respond to it. And if he doesn't, then he's dead.
Sure.
But like that is the thing that made me like that aspect of the Catholic faith is what made me come back to it after lapsing for a long time. In addition to getting married and having children and receiving friendly pressure from family to make sure that their immortal souls are saved by having them baptized. But that's the aspect of it I always appreciated, and it's what made me unable to participate or like invest in like other practices, because I need that mysticism there. I need like all the trappings that go along with it, and to that, how they found locations that could believably pass themselves off as the Vatican and and Vatican City in general, like bravo. Like that was
Yeah.
like they did such a good job with that, because there was no way that the church was going to let them get anywhere near them, to make whatever they were doing. But it all like it had a reality to it, and it felt right, throughout it. The especially like the room that they're in when they're like casting the votes, or like when they're all congregated, like that felt pretty believable. Yeah. And yeah, it's golly, where was I
Well,
going with that? Yeah.
the locations sort of in tandem with the cinematography. I
Mhm.
am just like, my God, some of the shots in this, like the very first time that they go to, I don't know what exactly it was, some sort of auditorium where they're all just kind of sitting in like these theater chairs, just talking about, what their first move is going to be, and just the way that it's lit, And there's that one sequence where I think it's after the third vote or during the third vote where all of the other cardinals in the room disappear except for the five that are receiving votes. And that sort of creative choice, I really like that. I think that was right after the guy from Africa gets sort of his shit blown up, and
Yeah.
it's during that vote. And then yeah, just I mean, there's so many. The shot of the umbrellas when all of them, it's raining out, and they're all walking into the room where they vote, and yeah, just incredible locations, incredible cinematography. It's just a feast for the eyes.
And that's the thing. It might just be people talking, but you can do a lot with that, and
Yeah.
they made the most of everything that they had going for them. And
Mhm.
but like what if any, yeah, I guess you kind of spotlighted it, and maybe we should just get into it, because like that seems to be the only hang up you have. Like,
Yeah.
what about the twist kind of, it was the turd in the punch bowl for you?
Yeah, so basically, well, I want to give people a final warning to,
Yeah.
if you haven't seen this movie, just stop listening right now, stop watching, and then go watch it, and then come back, because the twist is sort of the reason why this movie is getting so much press, and it's because essentially the person who gets elected uh, pope, it turns out that they're intersex. They were hermaphroditic. They were born hermaphroditic, where they were born with uh, both some female sex organs, some male sex organs, and they don't know this until after they have voted him pope. And basically, I mean, the problem that a lot of people have with this is basically that they just don't like the fact that either they would call the movie woke, or they would say that this person, Benitez, is trans. And this is not a trans person. So, I mean, don't even go there, in my opinion. This
Yeah.
is completely different. And so, um, my personal problem that I had with it is that I thought it was haphazardly implemented into the film, where this felt like the twist was devised before the rest of the story, as if the author was like, had this idea for this twist, and then sort of was like, okay, now I need to build a film around this. And because of that, it felt like it feels like a gotcha. It feels
Yeah.
like it feels like it was barely ever hinted at within the confines of the film. I think we get literally one quick scene where Lawrence's assistant comes up to him and he's like, "Oh yeah, Benitez went to Switzerland once, but let's move on from that." And like that's the only time it's even hinted at. And I just felt it was so haphazardly implemented, and it was carelessly implemented, and everything after that was like, I just didn't like it, because it was everything felt so quick, everything felt so out of nowhere, where Benitez, the way that he sways everyone sort of to his side, it was too fast, it was unconvincing. I don't believe that these cardinals, who didn't even know who this guy was like a week ago, would suddenly be like on his side all of the sudden, when
Hmm.
everybody else that they've been dealing with, they have like known for a very long time, and they've been voting for because they know that it would sort of further their political agenda, and then they suddenly vote for this guy because he gives like one like minute long speech about how we need to basically unite under the banner of furthering our religious cause. And I don't know, it didn't work for me at all.
No, and I think what you're saying is fair, because they could have done more to, like kind of tease, like because the central thing that I think the original novel and this movie also like fails to do is to really dig into how Benitez's nature informs not only the faith that the character has, but also just like the character, like the like his actual like personal character. What, like why would he have that perspective? Or why would he embrace the values and the virtues that he does in lieu of the more reactionary set, to the bombing that is playing out over the screen right now. Like that's a major missed opportunity. They were so caught up in the red herrings and all the little like other little like mini plots going on, that they didn't dig into what really would have made the conclusion satisfying. They didn't pave the way at all for it, and instead they treated it like, oh, verbal Kint is Kaiser Soze all along. You know what I mean? Like this isn't that kind of a movie, to me, and it's weird. But then like the like not only the reaction to it, but like my, I guess, appreciation for at least just choosing to do that, if I have any, is that it takes nuance. Like it's something that reactionaries can't do, and it's not something that people who are like devoid of of nuance in this day and age are able to accept. It's like what does it's like, and it's something that the character says. It's like I am as God made me is a very classic Catholic view of things, and it's sometimes used by the gay community to try and get acceptance within the church, to be fair. But in terms of this character, no, it's like, but what I find unbelievable about the character's story is that they didn't know that other people had different, that they were different from them, that they had something going on in them that was different from the regular biological male. Like, did they not take a health class ever? Did they never think it was weird that they had like, I can't remember, like, I know it had a uterus. He had a uterus, but did he have a vagina as well as a penis? And how long into his life, like, did he have a period? You know what I mean? Like what's like, there wasn't enough time to ask, to like really get into those questions, but they occurred to me. And like the fact that he would only find it out in adulthood, I don't know how realistic that is. I might be wrong, but we have to think about the day and age that this character was growing up. I suppose it was it was the deep dark secret. It was kept from him, and he just wasn't curious enough about his own self, until it was exposed to even him. But
yeah, I think well, I think the just to say a quick thing on that, I want to say it's inferred that all of the female sex organs were all internal.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
And then he had male, he had a penis, and that is what I inferred from it. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I mean, and then of course, like, another thing that I kind of chalked it up to was he was Mexican, right? Like, he came from Mexico, and then he went to Kabul, Afghanistan, and like I would say, two very repressed societies. And so he probably wasn't even asking those questions, because if he were to ask those questions in either one of those societies, he would be shunned. And so that is kind of how I circled that square in my mind when I was watching it. But yeah, anyways, what were you going to say?
Well, just, the final point, to me, is that it's not heresy for this to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I am not offended, that this would occur. For all we know, we've had an intersex pope at some point. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even that like shocking of a twist, and it almost makes me wish, to an extent, that it wasn't in the movie at all, because it kind of like gets in the way of everything else it was about, and it completely dominates the conversation going forward. And it's, you know, going to be what this movie is, because the activist set from one side will oppose it, the activist set from the other will embrace it. Because, you know, it's like, as far as an expose on the churches itself and its processes, like I said earlier, it's like you have to be naive to not know that this is how it works. It's all politics. You know, like this is a nation that extends beyond boundaries, and has 1.5 billion members or whatever it is, and and it's not a democracy except in that room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The best way that I sort of described it was, I also wish it was just not even in the movie, and it's because I do think that it's treated as like a gotcha, you know, or like it's very cheap in the way that it was implemented, and the way that I sort of described it in our Google Doc was, up until the point that the twist happened, I felt like I was watching like a prestige drama. And then once the twist happened, I was like, okay, now this feels like an airport bookstore thriller novel. You know, like it just didn't feel like it belonged really. And it just, yeah, it was so out of left field. But yeah, I think to sort of twist back to things that we liked about the film, you had mentioned it at the beginning, but you specifically, I mean, the performances are the centerpiece of this film, and you specifically called out Tucci and Ralph Fiennes. And so, what did you like in particular about their performances?
I think, you know, partially it's just because I'm a stan of Fiennes. We just rewatched Grand Budapest Hotel before watching this, and I just love that guy acting, no matter what he's doing. But he like the quiet moments, you know, when it's, you like you called it out in there, but in the doc, but his breathing, you know, like how that would just like I don't know, there was just like internal stuff going on. But, you know, with Tucci, he kind of just had this, you know, like, even though he's, you know, buttoned up, there's this like manic, you know, like edge to what he's doing that I was picking up on. Because I don't know, like the pressure was getting to him more than anybody, you know, as far as I could see. And, you know, that took a, you know, like some, you know, ability to pull off. And I got a little cord grabber down here.
Oh god. Yeah, for me, I really liked Tucci because he was, I mean, out of all of the priests, he was sort of the one who saw this process for what it is.
Yeah.
Like a political process where he was like, we must vote this way or else we will not further our political cause. And so he was the sort of, I mean, he was basically the progressive liberal of the group, and he sort of wanted, he was in direct opposition to the Italian guy. I can't remember his name right now. The guy who hits the vape all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one who, you know, wants it to, you know, be, you know, about the ethereal nature of it. Okay. What
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah, I really liked his performance, that guy, the Italian guy. And then I also got to call out the guy who played Idayemi, the African cardinal. He was great, especially, you know, his scene where Ralph Fiennes basically sees to him his undoing, basically, where he was like, you will not be pope. Essentially, he tells him just to his face, you will not be pope. And then his sort of unraveling, and then the one actor I did want to call out as kind of that I would call serviceable, but sort of just kind of exists within the movie, is John Lithgow, because he's sort of like, I mean, I always enjoy a John Lithgow performance, but he sort of just is there. And I didn't think his performance was anything of note. He was fine, but it was just kind of, he was there, and he was, you know, I guess it's not really that showy of a role, because he basically, is the guy who's trying to manipulate things behind the scenes, using money, basically using cash. And so he was fine, but just nothing of note as far as he went. I didn't think.
He's just a name to put on the credits. Get it on the poster. Like
Yeah.
not that he did anything bad. It's just the nature of the role.
Hmm. There are some sort of the last sort of thing I wanted to touch on was there were some sort of speculative questions that I don't know if this stuff is more definitively answered in the book, but I wanted to get sort of your thoughts on some questions I would consider speculative. And the first one of those is, do you think there's anything behind the fact that they never refer to the Pope who died by name in the movie?
Yeah.
Is there anything behind that?
Yeah, because I mean, either you're just giving him a fictional name or you're saying it's like Pope Francis. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
I think that kind of made sense to me, just to like leave them vague, because they're dead. Like they don't matter in that way. But one of the questions you posed in the doc that I think is fair is the question of did the Pope manipulate it, from the grave to get Benitez, as his successor. And I like that's possible, but how could he have foreseen all of the moving pieces to the Game of Thrones that was going on there? Because but then again, if they all know each other that well, it's possible. And it's
Yeah.
it yeah, and I because like the transition to the Pope we have currently didn't involve a death. It involved Pope Benedict resigning, or like retiring, which
That's right.
hadn't happened in a few hundred years. And he did that because his brother was being outed for being a pedophile. But we don't really like that is somehow not factored into the story, as people like talk about the history behind that, even though we know that happened. And he was essentially pressured out. So like something like it wasn't something he did of his own volition. And but as far as this movie goes, like the Pope knew he's in ill health, knows he's dying, because like he made Benitez a cardinal like at the last minute, from what I recall, right? Essentially, and that's why like he wasn't on the list, and he just kind of is like shows up out of nowhere to everybody else. And yeah, and if he didn't know what would happen, but he definitely threw the wild card in there, and it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I find one of the most interesting speculative questions I find is of the two sort of, by the end, it's essentially between Lawrence and Benitez as far as the votes go. And so I'm kind of curious, as far as with these two men, do you think either one of them was actually like actively gunning for the papacy? Because the way that Lawrence would have you believe is that he is not actively seeking it, and he doesn't want it. But then, behind the scenes, he's doing all of this sort of like political maneuvering, and he's constantly, he's like, stop telling me about these things. But then he's like constantly getting info fed to him from his like office lackey guy. And so, and then on the opposite side, you have Benitez, who I found it was very odd. One of the things that I caught was, I think in the very first vote, Benitez has 2 votes. And then by the time they get to the second vote, he's already gained like 6 more. And it's like, whoa, like where did you get those votes? How did that happen? And then he just kind of increasingly gets a couple more and a couple more. And so that is sort of one of the central questions to this movie, in my opinion, is, were either of these two actively gunning for this position behind the scenes?
Lawrence definitely was, because like a line that is like oft repeated is that like no sane person would want this job, much like being president of the United States or something like that. And so you want to act like you don't. And there were several, like I think, Francis had that descriptor. What made him appealing was that he wasn't, by all appearances, it's not a job he was gunning for. So that's what made him appealing. And as far as Benitez getting votes, I think those were, I don't like any of the other names up there. I'm just going to cast it to this other guy. I'm just going to throw it away, because I don't want to, I don't want to throw my support behind someone that I have issues with or that I don't trust. And then that just snowballs from there.
Yeah, that, I like that. I like that thought. I like that theory. Cause yeah, I think you're probably right about that. But yeah, I mean, some very interesting questions. I almost do want to go back and see if the book answers some of these, because the movie kind of just leaves them open. But yeah, I don't know. Unless there's anything you wanted to mention, I think, this is a very worthwhile movie in my opinion. And I don't think that having a problem with the way that this movie ended as I did with its twist, I don't think it's cause for throwing, the previous, 90 minutes out. And so I still think this is definitely a worthwhile movie to see. And if you are somebody who, gets their knickers in a bunch about things like Oscars and awards season stuff, you have to see this, because we are gonna no doubt be talking about this again when it comes Oscars time, because I think this will be one of the front runners this year for sure. And so yeah, very worthwhile in my opinion. Anything else you wanted to say?
And if you're a Catholic, you should see this movie. Because I was growing up at the time where the church literally would still send out their guidance for what movies a Catholic was able to see, and
Sure.
and which ones were objectionable and for why. Because after they lost their censorship power, over the Hollywood, they created their own rating system, and and this is the kind of movie that would get what I forget what the designation would be, but it's the equivalent of X, just because it's blasphemous, or something to that effect. It's disrespectful to the church, so we can't accept it. But I think it's more honest in its portrayal. So be open to it, talk about it at your Bible study, bring it up to your priest or something, if you have him over for supper. But this is a movie that is worth seeing for really anybody of any stripe, honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
On to the mentionables here. You were one of the brave souls to give Silent Hill 2 Remake a try. Should I buy this? Because it runs well on the Steam Deck, from what I hear.
Okay, awesome. That's good to hear, because see, what had initially, I didn't buy this on release day because initially I heard there was some major technical problems with it. So I waited about a week and a half for them to patch it. And from what I understand, yeah, now, I mean, from my experience, it does run pretty well now. And it's funny because this game is from a pretty well-known development studio called Bloober Team.
Yeah.
Who, in my opinion, has made nothing but shitty games up until this point. I tried playing the Medium, and I thought that game sucked. And I tried playing, God, what was their other one? They had another one. It's like Echoes of Fear or Layers of Fear, and I thought that game sucked. And this was such a surprise for me, because it's like they just turned around their whole act, and this is a very faithful remake of Silent Hill 2, and it is at the same time a remake that embraces the modernity of video games, where it gets rid of all of the sort of stuff from the PS1 game that you would have, that nowadays we would call like that we would say would actively hamper our ability to enjoy it. Things like tank controls and like a static camera that switches that you don't control, and stuff like that. And so I really really enjoyed this. It's very creepy. This is the perfect game to play for Halloween, and yeah, definitely pick it up. You could probably wait. I think you can get it for if you shop on like gray list sites on the internet, like CD Keys or like Green Man Gaming, you can get it for about $50 right now. But you could wait for a price drop. I think maybe it'll probably drop around Black Friday. It'll probably drop to probably about $40, I would say. And so, but yes, very very awesome, very fun.
There is a trend that like I've seen come up now where, because like, yeah, this is a full-on remake, but have you seen all of the weird remasters that are coming out for like PS1 era games, like Dino Crisis and The Thing? Like, and then with those, it seems like they are remaining true to the, like, to the original, gaming mechanics, as opposed to making something modern, apart from like updating the graphics. And like, I guess do you have any experience with that, or like which approach do you think is better?
Well, yeah, this is a full, because I mean there's a difference between remasters and remakes. And this is, like you said, a full-on remake, like from the ground up. They've essentially, what they've done is turned Silent Hill into a remake similar to, I don't know if you ever played the remake of Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 3.
I've seen them, but I haven't played them.
Yeah, they've essentially done that same thing for this game. But here is the thing you have to be careful of nowadays. Are you familiar with the video game Killer 7?
Oh yeah, love that game.
Yeah. Did you hear about the remaster?
The remaster?
Did you hear about the?
No.
They already did. So
okay.
About 2 days ago, there was a shadow drop of a patch for that game on Steam and on Switch and PS5 or PS4, and people were like, "What is this?" And what they found out was that Killer 7 has essentially been behind the scenes. They basically have remastered the game in a sort of shadow drop type way, but they did it using AI. And people from what I have heard, this remaster of Killer 7 is awful. It is absolutely awful. You can tell that they did it with AI, and so that is now a thing that we are going to have to contend with going forward. Is sort of these companies, these video game companies, are going to use AI to just kind of shit out these remasters. So we're going to have to be careful of this.
Oh God, that's disappointing, because you don't fuck with Suda 51, man.
Yeah.
Oh, dang it.
So yeah, very, very, very interesting. But as far as Silent Hill 2 goes, you don't need to be afraid of that. This is a from the ground up remake, using all new assets. It looks like a game that should be released in our current year.
Yeah.
So
it makes you really pissed they aren't making more Silent Hill games. But then again, they haven't had a good track record since The Room, and even that had its detractors. But speaking of just things changing as you play a game and come back to it, Hades has released the Olympic update, which added the third tier to the above ground section of the game, because it's split between trying to retake the underworld and to defend Olympus from the attack of Kronos. And for like when the game first went into early access, the upper level only went to the first two boss fights, and now we're getting to the third boss battle on that, and it's Prometheus. He's really fucking cool to like fight against. He's got really interesting mechanics, and they're just sprucing the game up. They have like a full like orchestra doing the soundtrack for the that upper level when you actually get to Mount Olympus, and holy fuck is it good. Like all of the audio in this game just got a major update. Like the sound effects and the different cues that happen when you talk to people or you interact with stuff. And they've added more portrait art, and like you filled in some of the blank spaces that were there during like the first 6 months or so that this game has been out. But I just want it to be at 1.0. I just need it to be done, because it is so much fun to play. And the new weapon that they've added is basically, it's called a cape, but what it is, it's like these like things that cover your hands, and it gives you like these wings and missile launchers. So it feels kind of out of place when you look at in terms of the other weapons, but the mechanics of it make the game really, really fun. And yeah, like I know that other people are pretty leery of early access. This is the first time I've ever done it myself, and the only disappointment is when I reach the point where I can't go any further. And because otherwise you could I've done like 60 runs between the upper and lower levels of the game. And but what's frustrating is that they're letting you know what you need to finish the game. But you need, because you collect these different resources, and then you go to your witch's cauldron and you brew things up to like add like all the bonuses to the levels and stuff. And there's this one option for like for the thing that will kill Kronos. But when they're telling you what you need to get it, but you can't get to the point in the game where you can. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're just dangling it in front of you, and it's like just fucking finish already. Like it's like I'm not sure like if they've actually set a release date for it, but by God, it better be soon, because I just need it to happen. July or May 2025. That is a long time.
Yeah, still, well, yeah, 8 months. Yeah, it's just that. See that I'm in the same boat, except I'm not playing it right now. I've had to sort of I've had to hold off because I do really, really want to play this, and from what I understand, it's in a good state, but I just want to wait until I want to see if I can wait until 1.0. But yeah, I cannot wait. I really, really got to check this out.
Like there are some things about it that quite aren't. Yeah, obviously the game's not done, but if you play Hades 1, it had this like fluidity to its combat, and in this one the weapons are just different, and they are kind of herky jerky. But you just gotta learn how they work a little better, I think, and then you can really go to town like Zagreus did in the first one. But yeah, I just had to give that little update because I had something new to talk about. It's spared me from talking about watching the Joe Rogan interview of Donald Trump, which was interminably boring and not what my hopes and dreams had built it up to be. So, but this game definitely is.
Yeah.
But that kind of does it for us. You definitely watch Conclave. Tune in next week for our election special. Well, next, that will be next week on November 4th, where I'm going to be reviewing and essentially discussing the legacy of the most consequential film made in North Dakota about North Dakota, Northern Lights, which I think pretty much everyone out there has never heard of. So I'm looking forward to that. It was incredibly hard to find a copy of this movie because I found out a little more about its history. It was made by a Marxist filmmaker collective from the West Coast. So that's why the rights for this thing are non-existent. And Kino Lorber supposedly was going to be releasing a DVD set or a Blu-ray set with a remaster, but that was announced like 2 years ago, and it hasn't shown up. So I made do with what I could find. But looking forward to that. And then November 11th, our next feature review is going to be of Heretic. That got like, is that Hugh Grant, right?
Hugh Grant, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be fun. Going to be fun. Him being a villain for once. I guess he's done it before, but I just think of him as a milquetoast, British.
Yeah,
guy.
I would think, I think this is his first horror movie so that's kind of the weird thing, is because I don't know if he's ever dipped his toe into the genre before.
Not that I can remember. No, the closest thing would be Dungeons and Dragons, possibly.
Yeah.
No, you should not climb into the crib. You're too big for it. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I have my work cut out for me in editing. See you next time.
See ya.